Hi, my name is Antonio Leiva from antonioleiva.com, a place where I help other Android developers to boost their careers. And today I wanted to talk to you about data binding. If you haven't heard about it, data binding is a tool to use code inside XML. That way you can bind the data directly with the view without having to use the activity as an intermediate. That way you can improve the amount of code you are using in your activity and remove that part of the code so that the cleanliness of the activity remains much higher and the code is much easier to read. To be honest, I have been avoiding data binding for a long time because for one reason or another I didn't find the use of it, but this week I started taking a look at it and I'm really impressed because it's very easy to use and also very powerful. So what I wanted to do here is to show you a simple example so that you can start with it. You lose the fear to use it because I at the beginning thought it was much more difficult than it is, and I want you to make your process as easier as I think it is now that I've learned the basic concepts of it. So if you're ready, let's get started. I'm moving to my screen. Here what I have is a very simple app where I have a username and a password and a login. This is a regular login form where if the username or the password are wrong, I will show here below a failure message, and if they are both okay, I will show success. This is working already now with regular code. If I press login without setting the username or the password, I get a failure here, and if I fill in both, you will see that it's showing a success here. So what I want to do is to start using data binding here and take the most out of it so that I can reduce this part of the code and these bindings that I'm doing here. To be honest, this code is now very simple because we are using Kotlin Android Extensions, but Kotlin Android Extensions have their pros and their cons. So I think data binding is doing a powerful binding here, and it's really interesting to start using it instead of Kotlin Android Extensions. So let's take a look on how to do the conversion, and you will see how easy it is and the things that it can do for you. So the first thing we need to change is the build Gradle. So I'm moving there. Let's go to, sorry, this is the generated one here in build.gradle. First thing we need is to apply a new plugin, Kotlin KAPT, because Kotlin Android Extensions, because data binding needs to create new classes or to generate classes, so it will need the code generator by using the Kotlin one KAPT. The second thing we need is to add here the data binding block to enable it. Enable that to true. And with this, we will be ready to start using data binding in our projects. We don't need to add any kind of libraries, as you see here. This is just the only configuration we need. To start using it, as I mentioned, we will be able to add code to our XML, but the XML needs to be a little bit special. As you can see, this is a regular linear layout with a set of views, the to edit test, the button, the test view for the message, and the progress to show it when we are checking the login, if the login is correct or not. But we need to add something extra with Alt Enter. We can use this, convert to data binding layout, and this will wrap the rest of the layout with a new layout tag, and then inside we have a data section where we can add the data that we are going to use to bind it to the UI. So here, the first two couple of things that we need, I will start with it because it's the easiest part, is something for the message, something that helps me bind the message that we want to show in the text view, and the second one will be the progress, if we want to show the progress as visible or not. So let's create these two variables. To create a variable, we just do variable, and then we have to write the name and the type. In the name, for the message, I'm going to call it message, for instance, info message, and the type is going to be string. And then a second variable that will be, sorry, this should be lowercase, and the second variable would be the visible progress visible of type boolean. Now we can use these variables in the code. To use them, let's set the simpler example, which is this one. If I want to bind something to the Android text property, I simply use the add symbol, open braces, and then I can write code inside these braces. I here would only do info message. With this, the text that we add to this variable will be automatically showed here. When we modify this, automatically this text view text would be updated. For the progress bar, it's a little bit more complex, visibility, because we need to do that. If it's visible, then visibility will be view.visible and then view.gone. But to use view here, we first need to import it. And this is done here by doing import and setting the class that we want to import. That way I can access to view.gone and view.visible from here. And I will do here visible, view.visible, and else view.gone. Don't forget to close braces because I always forget it and it's a real pain. Great, so with this, we already have bound the progress visible variable, which is in fact progress visible, not visible, to the visibility of this progress bar. Every time this progress visible variable is changed, this code here inside will be relaunched and the value will be recomputed. So this is great. Now we have configured our XML to start using data binding, but we need to change some things here too. The first thing I'm going to do is to make the project because it needs to create a class that we are using now, you will see. So the project is making here, is building. Nice, we already have it. To bind the data to the XML, we need to inflate the XML in a little different way. To do it, we use a class that is called data binding URL, and we use the method that is called the same as the one we were using before, set content view, but it needs the activity as the first argument. With this, we are already inflating it. But this method is generic, so we need to specify which kind of data binding we are receiving from here. To do that, I'm going to create here a lateinitVar property that will hold the binding, and it's going to be of kind view activity main binding. If you see, the binding class that is auto-generating has the same name as the XML activity main, but with the binding word at the end. So with this, we can assign it to this binding variable, and now, as this function is generic, it already can infer that this is of kind activity main binding, and it will work. Okay, so now that we have this, we need to substitute this progress visibility and this one, and also the text with the binding. We are not calling to the real views anymore. We are only interacting with the binding object. So to do this, if you see, binding has a new set of properties that are the views of the XML, but also the variables. The variables are here, progress visible and info message. So we've set progress visible here to false, and we can remove this one. Progress visible to true. I'm going to copy it. Progress visible true. And again, progress visible false when it ends the check and updates the text. And with the test, we need to do the same. Binding dot info message equals result. So let's see if this keeps working. As you see, the configuration is really easy. You just need to call that binding set content view that will inflate the view, but tied to this new class, and we can interact with this class to change some things. So if I press login here, you see that the progress appears and then it hides, showing the failure message. So everything is working the same, but we are now interacting with data binding. Another interesting thing with data binding is that we can also call functions, not only set values, but also we can also call functions, for instance, the listeners. To do this, we need to be able to interact with an object. So here I'm creating another variable. From what I've seen, because I don't usually use it this way, I use it the way we'll see later, but I've been investigating how people does it to communicate with the activity, and I saw that they usually call it handlers and then create a new handler object or just pass the activity. For simplicity, I'm using the activity here. And what I need to do is to make this function public so that I can call it from the XML. So what can I do now? Here in the bottom, I can do onClick, and then I can call the function. To do that, as usual, to write data binding code, add braces, enclosing them, and here I can write a lambda. To write a lambda, I write the arguments, the input arguments of the function. In our case, I don't need anything. I could pass the view here, but I don't need it for anything, so I'm not doing it. And on the right side, I can call handlers dot on login clicked. The great thing about data binding is that I can even call the rest of the views from here. So I can refer to the user and to the password from here and already use them as arguments. So I can do user get text to string and pass get text to string. As you can see, the data binding code is in fact Java code. We cannot, or at least I don't know how to do it, but we cannot call Kotlin code from here, so we need to still use get text and all this. And with this, we should already have it. Let's try it. And first, I'm going to remove the set of listener from here because otherwise we would be lying. And I need to add the new handlers. Let me make again so that it creates the new variable in the binding object. Binding handlers equals this. Awesome. So let's run again and see whether it works. So cool. As you see, it's showing failure here, and if I press login again, it's showing success because it's being able to run this code and check if both are not empty, etc. So with all this, we have bound the click to this function without any more issues. And the good thing about this, as opposed to the regular onClick, is that this is in fact in compile time checking that this login click exists. Otherwise, it won't let us compile. While on the other hand, using the regular XML onClick, it will only crash when you are trying to click on the button and you wouldn't see it in compile time. So this is much safer than the regular onClick. Nice, but imagine that we want to go a little further and that we don't want this code here. We want to create a new property that allows us just to set the boolean and forget about anything else. This is a very simple example and it may make sense or not, but I want to show you how you can create custom binding adapters so that you can do more complex things in a very easy way. The custom binding adapters are adapters that allow us to create new properties for the views, and when we set a value to that property, it will call to a method that we can define in our code. So I'm creating a new class that is called binding adapters. In fact, it's a new file, it is not even a class, and I'm creating a function here. We can make use of extension function to apply these new properties. Imagine that we want something that is called bindVisible that receives a boolean, visible by boolean, and based on this, it can set the visibility. This will be applied to any views because all views can be shown and hidden. And the good thing is that we can use this as a regular extension function if we want. It doesn't need to be exclusively used for binding adapters. With this, we would do if visibility equals if visible, then view visible, and else view gone. The only extra thing we need to do so that this behaves as a custom binding adapter is to use the binding adapter annotation. And here we specify the name of the property that we are going to use from the XML. For instance, visible. One extra thing to take into account from what I've seen so far is that you need to be aware of possible nullability. So I recommend you to check nullability here too. Otherwise, I've been also receiving warnings when compiling. So if you want to be extra sure, it's better to be sure that you are dealing with nullabilities here. So here we are doing if visible is true, if it's false, or if it's null, we are hiding it, and otherwise we are showing it with true. With this, the only thing we need to do is to go back to activity main, and here instead of calling Android visibility, we can do app visible equals visible. Sorry, let me first include this, and here would be add braces visible. And that should be it. I'm getting an error over here because I removed the closing thing here. And with this, I'm making it again because I need to change. Well, not. I don't need to change anything from here. I'm getting an error here because this is probably visible, not visible. Let's run it again. And that's it. Again, if I press login, this is sadly working the same. So when progress visible changes, this will call this custom binding adapter and will update the visibility of it. So you see how easy it is to create your own custom binding adapters. It's not recommended to abuse of this. So as if you are able to use the regular ones, the regular binding adapters, the default ones, it's better. But for some particular cases, it might be really interesting. In this case, as this can be very repetitive and can happen a lot of the time, so that you don't need to repeat this part of the code, it can be an interesting solution. Nice. So now we have this, but I mentioned at the beginning that I usually don't do it like this, and this is because data binding works really well with model view model. In fact, the concept of model view model, the presentation pattern that Google is advocating with their architecture components, cannot be called like that if you are not using data binding. If you use a view model without data binding, you are in fact using a variant of model view presented, but it couldn't be called really model view model without data binding. So what we are going to do is to start using data binding in this example with the use of model view model. And we'll see that we need to change a couple of things. If you are interested about learning model view model, if you haven't learned about it before, check here below in the description, and I'm leaving you an article where I explain how to start with model view model, and there's also a repository that you can check and all that. So I recommend you to take a look if you haven't done it before. So now here I'm going to create my view model. I'm calling it main view model, and I need to add a dependency here that is called lifecycle extensions 200. I think it's the latest stable one. Yes. This extensions one includes things like LiveData that we are using it now, like the view model providers, also the view model. So it will help us create everything that we need now. Right, so class main view model extends the view model from architecture components. And here what we are going to do is to bind each of the views to a LiveData. The good thing about the integration of data binding with architecture components is that data binding can be aware of LiveData changes. So when I change the value of LiveData here in the view model, the UI will be automatically updated without having to go through the activity, as we would need to do in the case that we are not using data binding. So it really cleans up a lot the main activity and prevents us from the boilerplate of having to communicate with the activity. So I'm going to create here a couple of LiveData properties, one for the message and another one for the progress visibility. So val message of type string here I'm using a mutable LiveData to be able to privately change the message from the main view model, but I'm only exposing the immutable LiveData. That way, nobody can change the message from the outside of the view model. And the same for the progress visibility. Progress visibility of type boolean. Now that I have this, I'm going to change the communication here a little bit. Instead of using all these variables, what I'm going to do is just to use the view model. I will have here the view model of type main view model. And with this, I can go here and say view model message and view model progress visible. I think I made a mistake with the name here. Yes, progress visible, not progress visibility. Progress visible. Also, and I'm also moving the on login clicked to the view model. So I'm removing this from here. I'm changing this in a minute. The on progress visible will be in the model view model 2 on login clicked, sorry. And instead of calling the binding here, I'm communicating with the LiveData directly. So this would be, sorry, I didn't change this one, progress visible progress visible value true and progress visible value false. Handler, I'm moving it here too. Okay, and this would be message value result. Great, so we have removed from the need to have this code on the main activity, which is also a more difficult place to test everything. Here in the view model, as LiveData is perfectly testable, we can test all this in a much easier way. So now we need to change this, but first I'm going to compile again because I need the new binding variables so that I can assign the view model. This tool will stop compiling, and instead of this, I'm doing binding.viewModel equals the view model. I'm going to recover the view model here, var view model equals view model providers of this. The provider is of type main view model class Java. And the only extra thing we need to do is to specify the lifecycle owner. And why is this? Because that way the binding object is able to subscribe to the LiveData and also to unsubscribe when the activity is being destroyed. So that way we don't have to do it on our own. Everything is done by the data binding code itself. And if I haven't made any mistakes, this should be working. Okay, I did a mistake. Oh yeah, I forgot here to call, instead of handlers, I will be calling model on login clicked. Let's wait to see whether it works. Great. So when we click now here without any values, it shows a failure, and with some values, it shows a success. So it's working great, and we have migrated this code to use the model view model pattern. So that's it. As you see, using data binding is really helpful and really useful, and it prevents from adding so much code to the activity. In essence, the part that is binding the views to the live data that we have in the model view model. With data binding, we can do that automatically without having to do that middle step. So, in my opinion, data binding is really interesting. It's a tool that you need at least to take a look to understand how it works and whether you are interested in using it in your own projects. I'm really happy of having taken a look at it, because I think that I will be using it from now on my own projects. And that's it. If you have any questions, or you want me to create more content related to data binding, something that may have not been clear, or some more complex examples that you can think of, please let me know in the comments, and I'll be happy to take a look and talk about it in future videos. Thanks again for being here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel here below, and so that you can follow the next videos that I'll be uploading in the following weeks. See you soon. Bye.